Welcome to the channel. Let's move on to the current news. The daily summary of the Ukrainian Armed Forces has provided yet another new information about the losses of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Naturally, we cannot completely believe this data, but a presumptive picture can be formed on the basis of this data from Russia and other independent sources. And so let's move on to the losses that the Ukrainian armed forces are counting. It is about 600 dead Russian soldiers due to artillery shelling, about 10 tanks, about 16 armored combat vehicles. There are also reports of 2 artillery systems blown up in the fighting near Kherson region and the Donetsk People's Republic. There is also information about 1 aircraft and 4 attack helicopters being shot down at low altitude in steppe terrain. It is likely that they were hit by conventional U.S. portable missile launchers. Also, after numerous night and morning attacks on the Russian Federation from various high-precision projectiles, such as X-555 and X-101 cruise missiles, many Ukrainian military installations and important infrastructure structures were hit. But such hits are becoming fewer with each armed conflict day because of the help of the entire West and, in particular, the United States. They are transferring more and more air defense systems to the Ukrainian armed forces, which are helping to close the Ukrainian sky with the most advanced defense systems. About 45 such missiles are reported to have been shot down. To date, it has managed to shoot down about 60 or even 80% of the Russian Federation's missiles, which is very damaging to Russia because it spends a tremendous amount of money on each such attack and the effectiveness decreases every day, but it has little effect on the front line, especially towards Russia and their armed forces. Also, according to the Ukrainian armed forces, no new ships have been destroyed in recent days, but everyone remembers the recent news from the Crimean Peninsula, where there were strikes against the Russian Navy, which the Russian government really didn't like, and they were furious with such actions of the Ukrainian armed forces. Basically, they blame these strikes on the grain deal between Ukraine and the West. Under the pretext of transporting cargo, the Ukrainian troops, by getting close to the right point to strike the Russian fleet, they were able to strike more pointedly. According to statements of one of the parties, such a strike was an unmanned aerial vehicle, which most likely did not even fly high, but moved at a very low altitude, almost on the lead, or even, as they say, moved on the water itself, and the construction of such vehicles, for Ukraine, was very cheap. According to the sources, such apparatus is created from cheap plating, placed in it a large volume of explosive powerful substance, and it moves it all, which is very surprising to all, on a conventional motor engine, which is used in the basis of conventional mopeds, motorcycles and scooters. This is very surprising, but whether to believe it or not, we can't say for sure. But, such a development is quite likely. It is quite feasible just to build such a cheap weapon in production and set it up with unmanned sensors. It is also reported that these strikes against the Crimean Russian fleet were carried out with the help of intelligence from the British Armed Forces, which once again emphasizes that Russia is at war not just with Ukraine and with a whole company of countries that support Ukraine at various levels, from humanitarian and monetary to armed and intelligence power. Almost every country in the West is up against Russia in 2022. Let's move on to the following data. 15 Russian military vehicles are also reported destroyed. Nothing is known about those who died inside them. Russian special military vehicles were not hit according to the latest information of the Ukrainian intelligence forces. Also, Ukraine reports more Iranian drone strikes. Overnight, 3 Shahed 136 kamikaze drones were destroyed by a territorial defense unit in Poltava region, and 3 more were shot down by Ukrainian Air Force fighters in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Let's move on to international news. The Ukrainian government held a meeting with the Czech Republic, where they discussed some front and support issues for the Ukrainian population, as well as the Ukrainian army. Ukrainian Defense Minister Reznikov said more than 50 projects were being prepared to strengthen the Ukrainian armed forces, and further military and humanitarian cooperation was discussed. News from the United States. The U.S. Armed Forces are ready to transfer new air defense systems to Ukrainian forces. The U.S. will transfer 8 NASAMS air defense systems to Ukraine, the Pentagon says. According to an official representative of the U.S. Department of Defense, Ukraine will receive 2 NASAMS systems in the near future, and another 6 will be provided later. The news from the UK is also positive for Ukraine. The Kazakh diaspora in Great Britain bought 11 pickup trucks and gave them to the AFU. Now the main thing for the people who bought all this is to make sure that the bought aid reaches the Ukrainian fighters and not be stolen somewhere, or maybe not reach at all. On the Russian side, there is also news about military cooperation with the Republic of Belarus. The Russian Federation is deploying Dagger missiles and their carriers in Belarus, as reported by British military intelligence. Satellite images from the 17th of October 2022 show this. They show 2 MiG-31K fighter interceptors at the Belarusian airfield Machulishi. Near them, in a protective earth mound, a large container was seen. It is likely that the container is associated with the S-24 Killjoy air-launched ballistic missile, a large-sized munition for which the MiG-31K variant is adapted to carry, the British intelligence report said. Belarus also continues to transfer its military equipment to the troops of the Russian Federation. A train with 20 BMP-2 vehicles was sent in the direction of Luhansk. The dispatch of the 7th Group of laden flatbed wagons with deactivated military equipment of the Belarusian Armed Forces is reported by Belarus Gazin. News from the Chechen Republic, part of the Russian Federation. It announced the continuation of mobilization measures in Chechnya, and summonses for residents of the republic will soon begin to be handed out there. Good news for Russia from Iran. Iran is preparing to send about 1,000 additional weapons to Russia, including short-range surface-to-surface ballistic missiles and strike drones, CNN reported in a statement. Also, in early November, Iran plans to send a shipment of more than 200 Shahed 136, Mohajer 6 and Arash 2 combat drones to the Russian Federation, the GUR. Well, these actions once again show that the Iranian government actively supports Russia and its actions and tries to help as much as possible in its cooperation. The European Union says it is ready to supply Kiev with electricity in case of shortages as a result of Russian shelling, European Commissioner for Energy Kadri Simpson said. Activists have exposed the Stolar Foundation's ties to Russia. Having analyzed the Stolar Charitable Foundation's page, we found contradictory data on the delivery of humanitarian aid to communities, which by then had long been occupied. Which indicates a direct connection of the foundation and other connected persons with Russia. This is stated in a journalistic investigation of the public human rights organization, Non-Stop. News from France. Vladimir Zelensky had a telephone conversation with French President Macron. Extremely important and productive conversation with the President of France. Concrete solutions to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. News from Germany. Roughly 100 or so Ukrainian servicemen are finishing their training at NASAMS installations in Germany, the New York Times. Norwegian instructors are teaching them how to operate and maintain the system and related munitions for it. New reports from Istanbul. Istanbul has coordinated the operation of a grain corridor to ports in Odessa and the region for November 3, Ukrainian Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov. Tomorrow 8 ships with agricultural products are expected to pass through the grain corridor. Head of Turkey Erdogan, who was able to reach an agreement between the government of Ukraine and Russia, was particularly helpful in this cooperation. He gave written guarantees to the Russian government that the Ukrainian armed forces would not use the humanitarian corridor for grain to bombard the Russian fleet under the guise of helping grain shipments to the West and poor countries. Putin took this step to de-escalate and try to negotiate peacefully with Ukraine and the West. There is also news from the New York Times, which, believe it or not, is up to you. They report that the Russian military recently discussed the use of nuclear weapons in war against Ukraine, but found no signs of preparation. The statements are serious and one should be more careful about making such dangerous news public. No one wants to allow the temperature to rise in this war. Let's summarize this news. The conflict continues and there is no end in sight yet. The situation on the fronts is beginning to slow down due to the onset of autumn and the imminent arrival of winter. The Russian government has taken steps to partially mobilize, which has resulted in a serious increase in the number of Russian army fighters on the battlefield. Russia also negotiates with other countries, such as Iran, and receives new and larger arms supplies for its army. The conflict is moving into a slow phase, and the future plans of the two countries, Russia and Ukraine, are not yet completely clear, as no major changes are visible on the map. But support for both Ukraine and Russia continues. Therefore, the conflict will move in some direction, but this we will see in the future. Here we come to the end of this video. Please like and subscribe, so that you can continue to follow the news and help us to promote the videos. Thanks for watching. We wish you happiness. See you soon.